Do you like Monster Girls? If you said yes, good, because we're about to dive into a game that throws your thirsty ass onto an island full of said Monster Girls. If you said no, what are you doing here? Get out. No, seriously, get the fuck out. The game I shall be talking about today is called Monster Girl Island. Who would have thunk it? Now, I can probably inaccurately assume what you're thinking right now. King Turtles, my thickness. Is this one of those games that are targeted towards the cultured types of gamers? Based on my first impressions before playing the game as well as my experience playing the game itself, I can assure you, yes. Yes, it is. Before we begin, let's establish something real quick. There are 3 builds of the game that you can obtain. The first one is called Monster Girl Island Prologue. This one has released back in 2019 and can be found on Steam or itch.io. The next build is the most recent build made available to those who donated to the Red M's Patreon last year. I'll dub this the Patreon build. Finally, there's a Halloween build which I know dick all about and haven't gotten around to trying yet. For this video, we shall be sticking with the Patreon build. To start with, let's go over some differences between 2 versions of the game, the Prologue build versus the Patreon build. Starting with the Prologue, it's obviously an earlier build as there is less shit inside of it. The story is divided up into chapters, and this particular build contains chapters 1 through 3, plus an interlude that allows you to continue playing after the build story ends, I think. It's been a while since I played that particular build, so correct me if I'm wrong here. Where the Patreon build differs is that it contains an additional chapter, being chapter 4, and that shit is pretty fucking beefy, my dude. Also, the game, I think, has some additional features that are in this version exclusively, I think. This version is not only better in my opinion, but all game footage that will be shown in this video is going to be from the Patreon version. If you don't like that, bite my dick off. I enjoyed the story overall in this game much more than I had anticipated. Going to my first radio in the Prologue version, I honestly was not sure what to expect. Given that this is one of those indie games that's very much under the radar and appeals to a very specific niche, I was honestly not sure if I was going to enjoy it. Quite frankly, I went into the game with very low expectations. The game description on Steam and the very positive reviews were enough to convince me to take the plunge, however, and I am pretty happy that I did. I'm not sure if it was my initial low expectations that caused this, but overall I found myself more invested with the story and lore of the game than I had anticipated. I feel like that last sentence was redundant. Out of the gate, this seems like the type of game that people will come to for the plot, but then get a nice hard cock slap by an actual engaging plot. The story has our protagonist, Chad Thundercock. The story has our protagonist, Chad Chungus, waking up on an island that should only contain elves, with no recollection on how he actually got there. He meets a variety of cast members, like Ophelia the Walking Database, Aura the Two-Tailed Cat Girl, Faran the Dark Elf who is very disinterested in humans, the Kitsune twins Renge and Sayuri, Suzu the cocky-ass hornet, and others as our colorful and beautiful cast of characters work together to figure out exactly what the hell is going on this island. As Mr. Chungus interacts with the mentioned cast members, he'll have opportunities to learn more about the characters and potentially get his dickle pickled by doing various things like collecting crabs and engaging in selecting choices of dialogue of varying consequences. While I did find that some of the characters' personalities may have strong resemblances to certain anime character tropes, it isn't like they were written to be one-dimensional. In my opinion, I actually found the characters to be more or less pretty well written, and each one is very interesting to learn more about. Mostly. The game actually goes out of its way to acknowledge that some anime tropes can be bullshit in a certain interaction between Aura and this cunt. If you want to know why I think this one is a cunt, please play the game or watch another video for more information, because that may or may not contain spoilers, I don't know. On top of learning more about the characters as well as fucking around with them, Chad also learns more about the worlds and locations the cast members originate from. Slowly, his memories also start to come back to him. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention he has amnesia. Go figure. I found it to be pretty enjoyable to learn more about the characters and the settings as I progress through the game, as well as putting together the various pieces of the puzzle that was provided before me. I mean, it's not exactly like this is one of those detective games where you are playing as Scooby-Doo going around the island and searching for clues here. You're not trying to solve some big riddle. However, there is enough information being withheld about the island and what's going on where I was plenty invested and wanted to continue learning more about it. That being said, the mystery really isn't that deep. Oh, he's not as deep as the pussy! Bro, dude, like, goddamn, I got so invested in this game, hugely because of the plot. No, dude, not that plot, okay?
Go! Throw it at him, not me!
I seriously think that the strongest point of this game is how the world's information and story are being presented, as it was my main motivation for continuing the game. This is especially true when it came to Chapter 4. I'm not going to spoil anything really, but that shit kind of hits the fan a bit, and the ending left me wanting more because it's basically a cliffhanger. While playing Monster Girl Island, you'll be spending your time exploring, gathering materials, and maybe min-maxing your pockets. Most importantly, the events come in the form of, well, events, as well as routes. Standard events usually prompt scenarios that progress the story, while routes have a bigger focus on the individual characters and your relationship with them. Supposedly doesn't affect the main story until the very end, so it should be okay to do all of those whenever possible. In both the regular events and the routes, a major focus is on the dialogue you have with the characters involved, and along with it are many opportunities to choose your response. Your dialogue options would consist of 4 colors: blue, red, black, and white. Blue choices are more or less inconsequential, and you'll be free to choose any of those without any worry, really. Red choices usually result in what you would call cultural research. Black choices usually end a relationship with a given character, and white choices are arguably the most important choices. The white choices will have a big impact on the story later on, supposedly, so it is best to think and choose wisely when those prompts appear. Thing is, I'm not entirely sure how much the white choices actually affect the game, as 1, I've not really played around with the different choices, and 2, most of the choices I've seen that were white were in either Chapter 3 or Chapter 4. So I am willing to bet that most of these consequences that come from choosing the white options will come later in the story. I presume that'll be when the final build is out. When you're not interacting with the characters, you can wander around parts of the island and gather materials in a few different ways, like picking fruit from a tree or using spears to catch fish. Sometimes you may need some of this stuff for story events, but mostly they'll be used to make food or be sold. In the case where gathering is a requirement for an event, it is usually a pretty quick matter to deal with and doesn't really feel like it drags on very much, which is always a plus. You can sell unneeded shit at a shop that is being run by Sayuri, but you can always buy stuff from Renge, who sells a few ingredients as well as tools you can use. Materials and ingredients found or bought can be taken to Ferran, who cooks food for you, given that you have the proper ingredients and cash available. So far to my knowledge, the main purpose of buying food is to sell them to Sayuri to make a tasty profit. Once you have the means to make more expensive dishes, you can easily burst open your pockets from all the money you'll be fucking rolling in. You'll need that money if you want to be able to upgrade your arsenal, as well as buying cosmetic outfits for the characters on the island. You can buy said outfits from an arachne known as Adeline, who is a connoisseur of the fashion shit. Now, with all this talk about gameplay, I'm willing to bet you lads and lassies of the cultured variety are wondering, "Hey boss, what about the monster pussy?" Well, my cultured ladies and gentlemen, I have you know that as I was recording footage for this video, I did the honors of hunting down every piece of tail I could hunt for in one playthrough, if you know what I mean. Here's what I learned. You see, the mechanics of the cultured research, they were fine. I mean, they did what they set out to do, but I can't really show you much of that because, well, here, let me let you in a little secret. YouTube is not as cultured as we are. When it comes to the context and the character interactions within these cultured scenes, it kind of varied for me. I mean, from a writing standpoint, it's perfectly fine. It fits into the game pretty well, and it's not like the scenes are forced. It's not like they're there for the sake of being there. I mean, you do learn a little bit more about the characters when you're interacting in these scenes, and which is actually kind of nice, honestly. But the thing is, though, there's a few of these interactions where I ended up questioning my own morals. It's not like super extreme or anything, but I think a couple of these scenes might put some people off, which is, I mean, it's fine. I say it's fine because A, all these scenes are skippable. So if you don't want to do any cultured scenes at all, you can skip them. And B, it's purely subjective from whether or not some of these scenes are weird. I mean, it depends on your own personal taste, really. That being said, there were a few times during the scene where a certain line or two would make me kind of chuckle because, honestly, I think they would fit very well in a very bad porno parody, which somehow adds to the charm of it. Looking at Monster Girl Island as a whole, it's a game that caught me by surprise and wasn't really what I had expected it to be initially. Back when I first downloaded the prologue version on Steam, I didn't really think too much about it being more than just a monster hunter for degenerates kind of deal. As I made clear during the video though, this game really does have a lot more to it than one would expect. and at a pretty impressive quality. That's especially true when taking into account that this game was pretty much being developed by one dude, which has its own advantages and disadvantages. Even now, I see a fuck ton of potential for this game, and I really do look forward to seeing how this ends up turning out. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure there won't be any more builds until the final release. Speaking of builds, earlier in the video, I had mentioned that there were 3 different builds of the game: the Prologue, the Patreon build, and the Halloween build. I'd already discussed the differences between the Prologue and the Patreon builds, but there are a couple things I have not touched on yet. Let's start with the Halloween build. I had mentioned that I knew dick all about it, but by the time I reached this point of the script, I had actually tried it. This particular build is Halloween themed, obviously, but it is completely independent from the other 2 builds, and it consists primarily of a trip to 𝒞𝓊𝓁𝓉𝓊𝓇𝑒 with a few of the girls dressed in costumes. That's pretty much it. Not for me. Going back to the Patreon build, the method of actually attaining said build as well as the Halloween build has changed in the last few months due to some developments that have come up. If you were not aware already, the developer 𝒞𝓊𝓁𝓉𝓊𝓇𝑒 left Patreon because, long story short, Patreon wanted him to change some shit. He was like, no bitch, and then he packed his bags and jogged on. It wasn't too long ago that he had been on hiatus, but however, at the time of writing the script or whatever, he's back in action at his own pace, and to my knowledge, he'd even finished the model for a new character of the game. I think her name is Pina, and I believe she's a dinosaur girl. Now, to attain the Patreon and Halloween builds of the game, you can join the Monster Girl Island Discord server. Within that server, 𝒞𝓊𝓁𝓉𝓊𝓇𝑒's actually posted links, specifically download links, to both of these builds of the game. If you have the interest, I did put some links in the description below leading to the Discord, an archive of the post that 𝒞𝓁𝓁𝓉𝓁's made about leaving Patreon, as well as a link to Monster Girl Island Prologue. There are 2 different links for that. There's one leading to Steam and one leading to itch.io. Or itch.io, whatever the fuck you call it. If you managed to survive to this part of the video, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you did enjoy it. If you have any thoughts about this game, whether it be my presentation, my opinions about it, your thoughts of the game, or pretty much anything you want to fucking spew at me, feel free to leave a comment down below. Just keep in mind that my opinions and or thoughts on the game is 100% subjective, meaning they are opinions. That also means they are not right and they are not wrong. Once again, thank you very much for watching, take it easy, and I will see you next time, if there's a next time.